Good morning, Craig from Western Filtration. Hey, I got an email from a customer using our VF61. He says he's got a leak. Made me think about a topic I'd like to discuss with you: O-rings and gaskets. Stay tuned. O-rings and gaskets are everywhere in our industry. We need to take care of them. We need to properly use them in order to give them a good chance of doing their job. This time, let's take a look at the housing that he was saying was leaking. This is the VF61. I'm not going to go into any real detail on the housing. We will have follow-up videos discussing each of the small housings, their specs, and what they can and can't do. This is the head. This is the bowl. And if you look closely, this is where the O-ring is going to seal against on the top. And on the head, the way it works is this is a nice smooth shoulder for the O-ring to sit in between and against the bowl here. That's well machined and will provide a good sealing point. What's important now, anytime you're installing O-rings, is inspect them. See if there's any cuts, any tears, anything small. A small cut is definitely a leak path. So take a look at it. As with all O-rings now, when you go to install it, you need to lubricate it. I recommend any petroleum jelly, Vaseline or in this case. Take some, be sure to spread it all the way around. It doesn't need to be thick, but the whole O-ring needs to be coated. The reason being is any dry spots is an opportunity for a leak. And the jelly, the petroleum jelly, actually provides a bit of a seal against the two metal surfaces. So once it's lubricated, go ahead and set it in here. Now, if you notice, the petroleum jelly actually will kind of hold it in place. So the O-ring won't fall. I bring that up because I had a customer that actually, when these were in service in the field, he would glue with a type of glue to hold it in place. And every year or two, he had to go through and scrape the glue off of his head. I showed him, just use Vaseline, it holds it in place. Once it's in place, grab your bowl and grab the head, set it in there, and be sure to turn it a little bit. Make sure that the petroleum jelly spreads a little bit on the metal. Again, that forms a sealing part. Set it in place and just throw up the bolts, or if you're using a band clamp, tighten the band clamp and just tighten it up. I'll talk about tightening it a little later in the video. At this point, let's just move on to the VF31. There's a reason why I wanted to talk about this housing. It's different. As you'll see, there's no 4 bolts or anything that holds it on, but there's still some important issues I'd like to address. One of it being, this is not actually an O-ring. This is a gasket. It's a flat gasket. And the seating is a little bit different as opposed to here. In this case, what they've done is they've machined a groove, and the gasket sets down in the groove. That will then rest against the top of the bowl. As in the prior situation with the VF31, you still lubricate it. Even though people think that it doesn't need to be lubricated, it does. I had a customer that had these things leaking, and he actually took out a micrometer and started measuring the depth of this Buna. Well, this is just Buna. Everyone's a little bit different if you're getting down to micrometers. Once I showed him that you lubricate it, all of a sudden he smiled and said, "You're right, it doesn't leak anymore." So lubricate it well. Place it into the groove like this. Make sure it's well lubricated. And as with the VF61, put it on and be sure to just rotate it some. Get some of the lubricant on the bowl. Give it a chance to make a good seal point. And in this case, it's very simple. You just bolt the head down, and there you go. And it won't leak with some good lubrication. Now, what I'd like to do is talk about a nozzle. All of these have the same thing in common. They're all O-rings. They all need to be treated properly in order for them to do their job. Let's talk about the Carter 64-200. Let's take a look at it. It's got the same basic issues as they do. Yes, it's a nozzle, but it's basically the same. Let's take a look. We'll take a look at the O-ring between the nozzle and the disconnect. So in this case, Carter has it behind this access screw. As we pull it off, one thing you'll notice again, there's an O-ring. There's a little tiny O-ring that they place here. Now, in this case, Carter actually lubricates it before it comes from the factory. So it's already pre-lubricated. We should probably check it just to make sure, but the way we can get at this is this will collect the O-rings in the swivel. So there we go. So let's do this so they don't fall back in. We'll pull it out. Now we pull this off, and this is a disconnect, and this is a sealing point with the O-ring. Notice it's highly machined. This is a pressure fueling nozzle, so it's under a lot of pressure, so it's got to be well machined to allow the O-ring to seal well. Let's take a look at the O-ring here. If we pull it out, this comes from the factory. If you notice, it's already pre-lubed. Carter does a good job on lubricating everything. They test everything, so it's got to be lubricated in order to pass. So this is the same. It's basically, you need to do the same thing. You need to put petroleum jelly on it if you're doing any kind of upgrade or any kind of overhaul, put it on, the same as you do in the other situations, and you put it back in. And in this case, there's a groove, again, highly machined. Set it in there, and just go ahead and rub it a little bit. You'll take the disconnect, and you put it back in. And if you do it right, you can feel it smooth. If you don't lubricate it, what may happen is you've got two dry pieces of metal against it. It will pinch the O-ring, it'll break the O-ring, or at least cut it. You've got a definite leak path. So put it in right, make sure it feels properly and smooth, feels great. And then we put it back in, put the ball bearings back into the swivel. Okay. Again, make sure this is lubricated too. It is, because it's new. Put it in. And you're good to go. Same basic O-ring principles as with the others. Now, what I would like to come back to is the proper bolting of heads on vessels. When we bolt the VF61, I want you to think about how you bolt a car tire. It's a crisscross fashion, and there's reasons for that. What you do, hand tighten it. Once you get there, what you'll do, pick a starting point. If I start here, just go till you feel it touch. I'll go straight across. You don't go to the next one. You do not go in a circle. Then what we'll do is go straight across here. And if you notice, like with a car, it's a star pattern. Now, once you've done that, go back to the starting point, and then you can put in the final torque to take it down. The reason that's happening, why you do it that route, is you want the head to evenly come down onto the O-ring. I've had a number of customers on large vessels with very high PSI, where they may have 30 bolts. And what they've done is they started and just worked their way around. What that does is it starts the pressure here, it compresses the O-ring to this point, the O-ring is going to pop out once you have any pressure. And you end up with a fuel spill, which is not a pleasant thing in the state of California, environmental, all the issues surrounding that. So you tighten it up, star pattern, just like the car wheel. That's all I really want to talk to you about today. If you have any comments, any topics you wish us to discuss, please put them down below, and please subscribe. In the meantime, be safe out there.